2 hours had elapsed since our 7 p.m. reservation. My wife, Emily, hadn't just overlooked our 10th anniversary, she hadn't even bothered to check her phone. The restaurant's elegant ambience, with its dimmed lights and soft jazz playing in the background, now felt cold and unwelcoming. The empty table where we were supposed to celebrate our decade-long marriage stood as a silent testament to her absence. The waiter approached me with that particular sympathetic expression reserved for guests who didn't show up, his eyes conveying a mixture of concern and routine professionalism. "Mr. Thompson, would you like me to wrap the gift box?" he asked gently, referring to the beautifully wrapped present I had planned to give Emily that evening. I glanced at the velvet case holding the upgraded diamond necklace she'd been hinting at for months. The necklace was a symbol of our commitment, a gift I had meticulously saved for our special night. "No, but I'd like to see the security footage from the staff entrance," I replied, my voice tinged with frustration and confusion. His eyebrows rose in surprise. Emily had been a regular here for business lunches lately, always insisting on using the discreet side entrance because it was closer to her office. It was unusual for her to miss such an important date without any prior notice. "Sir, I'm not sure about that, Michael," the waiter responded hesitantly. "I've been working here for 10 years, we've catered your wedding, and it's not our usual policy to share security footage." I felt a surge of irritation but maintained my composure. "Michael, please. I've been a loyal customer, and there's a valid reason I need access to that footage." I pulled out my phone to show him the tracking app I'd installed last week after finding an unfamiliar receipt in Emily's coat. "My wife is in your restaurant right now, just not with me." He hesitated, the conflict evident in his eyes. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he nodded. "All right, follow me." We moved to a discreet office near the kitchen, where the restaurant's security operations were managed. The room was filled with multiple screens displaying various angles of the establishment. Michael pointed to one screen showing the staff entrance. The remaining security feed showed exactly what I'd expected, Emily entering through the service entrance about 40 minutes ago, laughing as her business lunch partner guided her to a private dining room with his hand resting low on her back. I recognized him from her company photos, Daniel Parker, the new VP of sales she'd been working late nights with for the past 3 months. Their professional relationship had always seemed strictly business, but now, the signs pointed to something more sinister. "There, in the blue room," Michael said quietly. "It's a standing weekly reservation, usually on Thursdays, but Mr. Parker called this morning to change it to today, saying it was a special occasion, your anniversary." They were celebrating my anniversary in the restaurant that had catered my wedding. "The champagne they ordered," I began, my voice unexpectedly steady. "Is it the same as what's on my table?" Michael checked his tablet. "Yes, sir. Mrs. Thompson always says it's her favorite. Interestingly, she mentioned last week that she developed an allergy to that brand." I stood up, straightening my tie, which felt increasingly constricting. "Michael, I'm going to need a favor." "Of course, sir," he responded promptly. "First, charge everything they order to my account, and I mean everything." He nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Second, I want you to deliver this to their table." I handed him the ring box. "Tell them it's from the gentleman at table 12. "My table, sir?" he asked, a hint of confusion in his voice. I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "I'll be at the bar. I want to see their reactions when they realize their private celebration is no longer so private." Michael timed it perfectly. I watched from the bar as he approached their private room just as Daniel was pouring their second glass of my champagne. Emily was sitting closer to him than any business dinner should allow, her engagement ring noticeably absent, replaced by an expensive-looking necklace that glinted under the soft lighting. "Compliments of the gentleman at table 12, Michael announced, placing the velvet box precisely between them. "You specifically requested they open it now." Emily's face showed confusion, then recognition as she saw the familiar box designed by the jeweler she'd been hinting at for months. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. "Weird, Daniel," she said, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Must be a mistake," Daniel replied smoothly, trying to maintain his composure. "No mistake," Michael interjected seamlessly. Mr. Thompson was very specific. The color drained from Emily's face. "John, my husband is here at table 12, she said, her voice wavering, though I believe he's moved to the bar now. He thought you might prefer the view from there when you open his anniversary gift." Daniel straightened his tie nervously, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Anniversary, yes, sir. 10 years today, we catered the wedding. Actually, Mrs. Thompson always requests the same champagne, she says it reminds her of their first toast as husband and wife." Emily's hands shook as she opened the box. Inside, instead of the diamond upgrade she'd been hinting at, she found her wedding video USB and a stack of photos of her and Daniel entering various hotels, timestamps from their business dinners, credit card statements showing purchases she thought she'd hidden. "Oh, and Mrs. Thompson," Michael added, "your husband asked me to remind you that your mother's birthday dinner is still on for Saturday, though he mentioned the guest list might need adjusting." I watched her face crumple as she realized the implications. Her mother adored me and was always bragging about her successful son-in-law. Discovering the affair would destroy her, especially learning that Emily had skipped our anniversary dinner to be with her lover. Daniel tried to salvage the situation. "Look, this is just a business dinner." "Of course, sir," Michael interrupted. "Though our records show you've had this business dinner every Thursday for the past 3 months, always with the same champagne, always on Mr. Thompson's corporate account." That was news to Emily. She turned to Daniel, betrayal flickering across her face. "You've been charging our dates to his company card?" "Actually," I said calmly, "he's been charging everything to my account, the hotels too. Amazing what corporate expense tracking software can find these days." Emily jumped as if she'd been shocked. "Michael, I can explain, the weekly hotel meetings, the champagne I'm supposedly allergic to, or maybe how you forgot our anniversary to my biggest client." Daniel stood up, puffing out his chest. "Now, wait a minute, sit down, Daniel, unless you want me to call your wife next. I'm sure she'd love to hear how you've been spending the consulting fees my company pays you." The private dining room became eerily quiet. Daniel sat back down, his earlier bravado evaporating. Emily stared at the photos, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Her designer dress, the one I just realized I probably paid for, seemed to weigh her down even more. "How long have you known?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Long enough to get everything documented, including the transfers from our joint account to your new private one." I turned to Daniel. "The one you convinced her to open for your future together." His face went pale. "You can't prove." "Actually, I can," I interrupted firmly. "Banking records are fascinating, especially when your wife still uses your birthday as her password. The transfers align perfectly with your Thursday meetings, almost as if you were charging her for your time." Emily's head snapped up. "What transfers?" I smiled coldly. "He didn't tell you what happens to the money you've been moving?" "Show her your phone, Daniel. Show her where her retirement savings really went." He claimed it was for their future home. Emily protested weakly, "John, please, we can work this out, like how you worked out stealing from our accounts, or how about the credit card you took out in my name?" Daniel tried to stand again. That was her idea. "Sit down," I snapped. "I'm not finished. The police will want to talk to both of you about that credit card. Identity theft is serious, almost as serious as embezzlement from a publicly traded company." They both looked sick. "That's right," I continued, "the SEC is very interested in how a VP of sales has been manipulating contracts to increase his commission, almost as interested as they are in insider trading. You convinced my wife to help you with." Emily started crying. "I didn't know that your boyfriend was using company information you gave him to make illegal trades. The evidence suggests otherwise. Those texts you thought you deleted, cloud backups are amazing things." Daniel finally broke. "Look, we can make a deal, like the deal you made with my wife, the one where she empties our accounts while you empty my company's." I placed a USB drive on the table. "Everything's already been sent to the SEC, and Daniel, your wife got copies too, all of them." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of consequences. Daniel was arrested before he could finish his crème brûlée. It turned out there was already a warrant out for securities fraud. The SEC had been waiting for more evidence, which I'd happily provided. Emily tried damage control, calling everyone we knew with her version of events. Unfortunately for her, I'd spent weeks preparing. Her family already had copies of everything: the photos, the bank statements, the text messages discussing how to hide their affair from clueless John. "Is it true?" her mother demanded when she showed up at our house that night. "You missed your anniversary dinner to be with that criminal." Emily was still trying to explain when her father arrived with more bad news. "The family trust you were set to inherit has a morality clause. Your grandfather was adamant about protecting the family's reputation. You're cut off," he said flatly. The trust committee voted unanimously after seeing the evidence: stealing from your husband, insider trading, identity theft. "What were you thinking?" "Daddy, please don't," Emily pleaded, her voice breaking. "You're 40 years old, not 14. You chose this, now you have to live with it." Daniel's wife, Sarah, was equally unforgiving. She showed up at Emily's office the next morning, tossing divorce papers on her desk in front of the entire staff. "Hope he was worth it," she announced loudly. "Because you're both named in the lawsuit, every penny he stole, every account he emptied. I'm coming for all of it." The company didn't wait for the SEC investigation to conclude. Emily was escorted out that afternoon, her corporate email already disabled. Her colleagues watched in silence as she carried her designer handbag, probably the last expensive thing she'd owned for a while. "You knew," she accused, "when she came home to find me changing the box. You knew about Daniel's gambling, the stolen money. I figured it out when you started moving money from our accounts. Did you really think I wouldn't notice half our retirement savings disappearing?" He responded, "I needed it temporarily for more insider trading, or was it for the sports book he's into for 6 figures? I interrupted. I handed her a printout. "Here's his real financial statement, the one he didn't show you when he was promising your dream life together." She sank onto the porch steps, staring at the numbers. "This can't be right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said a lot of things, just like you did. Remember last month when you said we should put the house in your name for tax purposes? Guess that plan's shot down now that the SEC is freezing both your assets, my assets." "But I didn't." She began, her voice faltering. "Trade stocks based on confidential information he got from being my client. The texts say otherwise. You two weren't very careful about discussing illegal activities over company phones." Her face crumpled as reality finally hit. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Well, you could start by calling Daniel." "Wait, he's in custody." "Apparently, he tried to flee to the Cayman Islands when he got the SEC notice. He didn't even bother to warn you first." The SEC investigation revealed the full scope of their schemes. Daniel hadn't just been gambling with stolen money, he'd been running a complex fraud operation using my company's inside information. Emily had been his unwitting accomplice, providing confidential data she thought he was using to plan their future together. His sentencing hearing was on what would have been our next anniversary. Emily sat alone in the courtroom, watching her lover throw her under the bus in a desperate plea deal. Mrs. Thompson was the mastermind, he claimed. She had access to the company data. She set up the trades using accounts in your name. His own lawyer corrected him wearily. It wasn't the first time Daniel had tried to shift the blame. The judge wasn't impressed. "Mr. Parker, the evidence shows you've run this same scheme before, 3 other companies, 3 other affairs with employees who could access insider information. This seems to be your pattern." Emily's face crumbled as she realized she wasn't special, just the latest in a line of women he'd manipulated for profit. The sentence was harsh: 15 years for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering, plus full restitution of stolen funds. Emily got 5 years probation and hefty fines for her cooperation, earning her a lighter sentence. Though, in her case, the legal punishment was almost redundant, she had already lost everything. Her parents cut her off completely after discovering she tried to transfer the house into her name to protect it from the SEC. "You didn't just betray your husband," her father said sternly. "You tried to steal from him too." The divorce was quick, the paperwork ironclad. She tried claiming duress, arguing I'd forced her into signing it. The judge's response was scathing. "Mrs. Thompson, you committed identity theft against your husband while engaging in an affair with his client. Your credibility regarding his character is somewhat compromised." Sarah, Daniel's wife, won her lawsuit, every asset. Emily had left her car, her designer wardrobe, even her precious jewelry collection was liquidated to help pay Daniel's victims. I heard through mutual friends that she moved back to her hometown, living in a modest studio apartment and working as a receptionist, the only job she could get with a fraud conviction on her record. The vibrant, ambitious woman I once knew had been reduced to a shadow of herself, haunted by the choices she'd made and the trust she'd shattered. The final twist came 6 months later. The SEC investigator called with an update. They had found Daniel's hidden offshore account, the one where he'd stashed his real money. "Guess what we discovered when we traced the transfers?" she asked. She asked every Thursday like clockwork. "He was moving funds out of an account in your wife's name right after their business meetings. He was charging her for the affair while charging you for the hotels, double-dipping right up until the end. I had Michael from Luke Bernardine send Emily the final bill from our anniversary night, her half of the champagne, the dinner she'd shared with Daniel, and one velvet ring box still unused at the bottom. I added a note, 'Happy anniversary, hope it was worth it.' The bill was returned unopened. Her new address apparently didn't accept deliveries after 6 p.m. Her apartment wasn't in a neighborhood where you want to leave packages out. The ring, I donated it to a charity auction benefiting victims of investment fraud. It seemed fitting somehow, something beautiful coming from all that betrayal, just like our anniversary dinner. Emily never did manage to accept delivery of what she'd earned. The necklace remained a symbol of our fractured relationship, a reminder of the night that unraveled everything. Months turned into years, and life slowly began to rebuild itself. I focused on my career, dedicating myself to restoring the reputation and financial stability that Emily's actions had jeopardized. The trauma of that night lingered, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating impact of deceit. Occasionally, I would pass by the restaurant where it all happened, the same place that once held our dreams now tainted by betrayal. The memories flooded back, Emily's laughter, Daniel's charm, and the crushing weight of discovery. I wondered how things might have been different if I had sensed the signs earlier, if I had trusted my instincts over the evidence that now lay bare before me. In time, I found solace in helping others avoid the pitfalls that Emily had fallen into. I began volunteering with organizations focused on financial fraud prevention and marital counseling, hoping to turn my personal tragedy into a force for good. Sharing my story became a way to process the pain and to warn others of the dangers that lurk beneath seemingly perfect relationships. Emily's story became a cautionary tale within our community, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that the pursuit of ambition should never come at the expense of personal integrity and love. Her name, once synonymous with grace and success, became a symbol of caution against the allure of quick gains and the peril of misplaced trust. As for Daniel, his downfall served as a lesson in the consequences of unchecked ambition and the lengths some will go to achieve their desires. His arrest and subsequent conviction marked the end of a tumultuous chapter, but the scars left behind were a testament to the lives he had irrevocably changed. Our 10th anniversary, which should have been a celebration of love and commitment, had become a pivotal moment that reshaped our lives. The lessons learned were harsh but invaluable, teaching me the importance of vigilance, the strength required to rebuild, and the enduring power of truth. In the years that followed, I found peace in the stability I had worked so hard to regain. The betrayal had left deep wounds, but they also fostered resilience and a renewed appreciation for the genuine connections that remained untouched by deceit. The journey was arduous, but it reinforced the belief that even in the darkest times, there is potential for healing and growth. Looking back, I realized that the ordeal had transformed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It strengthened my resolve, deepened my understanding of human nature, and underscored the importance of honesty and transparency in all relationships. The night that changed everything became a catalyst for profound personal development, shaping me into a more aware and compassionate individual. Emily's absence from our lives was a constant reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating impact of betrayal. Yet, it also highlighted the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity to overcome even the most challenging adversities. Our story, though marred by deceit, ultimately became one of redemption and the unyielding pursuit of truth. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video, I concluded, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The narrative, once a personal ordeal, had evolved into a broader message of caution, resilience, and the enduring quest for integrity in the face of betrayal.